Okay, can we let folks into the meeting? Or should I wait? I think I'm gonna let, what do you think, Jag? Should I let folks in?
Yeah, let them in. We'll
Okay,
let 'em
great.
in.
Admit. All right. Just letting folks into the meeting here. When you join, please mute yourself just to avoid any background noise initially. It's much appreciated. All right, perfect. So we're going to start this meeting. I'll call this meeting to order. We're just going to run through roll call real quickly. So let's see. I don't see that Danny is here. I don't see that Jacques is here. But let's see. I see Michael. There you are. Juliet. Hello, Terry. Mason. And am I missing anyone? I don't think I'm missing anyone. Well, thank you for coming. To the members who are here, so glad you're here, and thank you everyone else for joining us. We'll get to the listening session very quickly here. We're just going to run through the agenda real quickly. So first we have the listening session. We'll have a presentation by some of our staff at the city, public participation where you all will be able to speak, engage with us, ask questions, largely informal. And then we'll move on to, typical HAB agenda items such as the approval of minutes from last meeting, matters from council, matters from the board, chair elections, matters from staff, including we're going to appoint a member of the board to the Eviction Prevention and Rental Assistance Tenant Advisory Board. Are there any additional agenda items that members would like to bring forth at this time? No. Okay, perfect. Great. Well, in that case, we can just swiftly move to the listening session. I'm going to turn it over initially to staff, but recall that this listening session is on the topic of housing insecurity, and we are hosting this listening session in order to understand, listen to you all share, your own personal experiences, perhaps that you've experienced in the past year during the pandemic, perhaps, the challenges you've faced extend far beyond the pandemic, and whatever those are, we want to hear about them. Again, largely informal. If you would like to speak for more than 3 minutes, I can grant that to you. We just want to hear as many stories and as possible. So we can revisit the topic later after staff gives their initial presentation. So I'm just going to turn it over to Jay/Kristen/Kisa.
Go ahead, Kristen.
Oh, you're not going to formally introduce me, Jay?
Oh.
Just kidding.
Kristen does not need any introduction.
That's right. So good evening, everybody. I'm Kristen Heiser. I'm the Deputy Director of Housing and Human Services with the City of Boulder. I get to work with Jay and Corey in HHS. And tonight I'm going to be joined by Kisa Kwambek, who is our partner over at the county's Housing and Human Services. And she's going to be telling us about the great work they've done this past year in standing up the housing helpline. But before we get there, I'm going to go ahead and give me a minute to figure out how to share my screen. Hold on 1 second. Talk amongst yourselves. Let me see. I don't want to do that. I need to share. We'll go smoothly in a second. Hold on. Sorry about this. All right. Alrighty. So I'm going to ask, can somebody just let me know if you can see a PowerPoint presentation that has my name and Keis's name at the bottom of it. I see some thumbs up over there. Okay. Going between different computer screens. All right. So I am here with Keisa, and we're going to be talking about the spectrum of housing supports that are available across the region, but primarily talking about what is available to residents of the city of Boulder. So we will be talking about just the variety of resources that are available and demonstrating just our ongoing commitment to offer housing options and supports to meet the diverse housing needs of our community. Let me see. All right, but before we go there, I want to go ahead and just review the Housing and Human Services mission statement. So the City of Boulder's Housing and Human Services, we strive for all to thrive. All Boulder community members deserve to thrive. Housing and Human Services provides resources and community connections so everyone can experience Boulder as a just, inclusive, and equitable community. We commit to achieving this mission by building relationships with those we serve, fostering collaborative partnerships, addressing systemic inequities, investing in and implementing effective, sustainable, and solution-based policies and programs, and creating and preserving a diversity of affordable housing options. And the reason I wanted to share this is while we are Housing and Human Services and we work all across the spectrum in terms of working with families, working with individuals who are experiencing homelessness, working with older adults, all of those have the underpinning of our commitment to making sure housing is a priority in our community. And to the extent that in 2020, Housing and Human Services invested $46 million, nearly half of our annual budget, to achieve our city's housing goals. Looking at it more broadly, I just want to revisit the Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan, which, as you know, is defined by the community. And in the latest comprehensive plan, the community defined that it aspires to be a complete community with a diverse and integrated population. Supporting that aspiration, the plan values a range of available housing opportunities as it helps define a community. The plan, the comprehensive plan that actually is asserted by the community, asserts that the social, economic, and environmental well-being of the community is enhanced when individuals and families are retained, workforce housing is available, and residents with changing or special housing needs are served. And that vision and those assertions are really the underpinning of our work that we do every day at the city and across the region with our partners. So tonight we're going to be reviewing the city and regional work to create and preserve diverse housing opportunities and the variety of services and programs committed to facilitate access to housing and keeping people housed. I'm going to start with talking about the city's affordable housing goals. So starting with bricks and mortar. In 2019, the city adopted or actually increased our affordable housing goal from 10% to 15%. And what that goal asserts is that by 2035, 15% of all residential homes will be secured as permanently affordable. And currently we're at 8.4% of the goal. Last year alone, in the midst of the pandemic, the city's housing investments saw the addition of 277 permanently affordable homes added to our inventory. These homes serve low and moderate and middle income households. They're diverse in their housing design in terms of single family or attached, their rental, their ownership. And as you see from this heat map, they are intentionally dispersed throughout the city and oftentimes indistinguishable from the market rate units that they are dispersed amongst. And our investments in our work spans the spectrum from emergency shelter to middle income ownership. Starting with the various housing opportunities, I want to talk about our home ownership program. The city has long had a commitment to creating home ownership opportunities for low and moderate income households. Currently, we have just short of 800 at 799 deed restricted homes that are permanently affordable in the city of Boulder. These homes are available for purchase to households earning between 80 and 120% of the area median income. And similar to what I had mentioned in the last slide, it really ranges. The home design is everything from detached single family to studio apartments. to help people with lower incomes maintain their housing. So it's not just about getting people into creating housing, preserving housing, or getting people into housing through home ownership opportunities. There's a real challenge for individuals of lower incomes to maintain their housing, whether it's due to just property taxes or just the expense of maintaining your house, of just those annual repairs and maintenance costs that you have to deal with. And so the city of Boulder partners with the city of Longmont, who provides financial supports, and I'm not going to go through all the details, this kind of highlights it for you, provides financial support for low income eligible homeowners. You have to own your home to make repairs to their homes, supporting them to be able to maintain their homes. So it's everything from general repair to accessibility. So there might be building a ramp. There's a program that's specific to help owners of manufactured housing, as well as emergency repair programs. And that program, I should give a caveat that this year we've had to really limit the focus on immediate health and safety applications for people that are applying just because of COVID restrictions, but moving towards kind of expanding that scope later this year. So also driven by the goal of people maintaining their homes in response to the economic impacts of COVID, the region has benefited from federal financial supports and protections. Whether it was the financial supports of stimulus checks and expanded unemployment insurance, these federal financial resources successfully served as a major component of many people's financial lifelines over the last year, supporting them to be able to remain housed as they navigated the impacts of COVID-19. Other relief measures came in the form of mortgage forbearance and suspension of student loan payments, allowing people to use those, their limited dollars maybe to pay for their housing costs. Our region benefited greatly through the CARES Act, and now we are going to be benefiting from the American Relief Plan Act that will be having funds come both to the county and to the city. So this past year, in terms of the CARES Act, the city received about 1.5 million, the city received more than that, but HHS specifically was able to receive 1.5 million in federal funds that we then passed along to our community partners to support rental assistance as well as income supports. And the thought behind that is if somebody's able to have some income supports that help them with food or medical costs or transportation costs, then they are able to use the dollars that whether it's something that they've earned through a paycheck or a stimulus check, be able to cover their housing costs while they're receiving supplemental dollars to help with those other household costs. The city also received an additional just over $1 million in CDBG funds through the CARES Act. So each year we receive about 800,000 CDBG funds that we have, which are federal dollars. This past year, we received an additional $1 million specific to helping our community respond to and recover from the pandemic. And then we are standing to receive the American Rescue Plan Act. The city is anticipating to receive about $21 million. And how those funds will be used is currently being explored by an interdepartmental team at the city. It is intended to be used not just for community supports, with that being a large priority, but also because of the destabilization of local governments, because of sales tax and other impacts that were experienced through the economic downturn from the pandemic. We'll be determining how to best use those dollars, but we anticipate that the city will remain in its commitment to meeting community needs with a large portion of those dollars. One other thing that we've received is, in addition to our regular home funds, another federal source, the ARPA money, also awarded $4.3 million to our region for in home funds. So each year we receive about $1 million just as a part of our entitlement. This year we received an additional $4.3 million. And that is very specific to helping individuals who are at risk of or experiencing homelessness. So we're working with our regional partners to determine how to best use those dollars to respond to that immediate need in our community. So we'll be working with the Homeless Solutions of Boulder County, as well as just our internal partners to figure out how to best deploy those dollars. And while the financial supports were key to keeping people housed, pairing this with federal and state supported eviction moratorium has been a game changer. And so I'm going to talk a bit about what that has looked like for us. So we're now looking at eviction rates or eviction filings in Boulder County over the last 5 years. And while we do continue to see non-COVID related evictions that are being filed, I mean, those are usually because there's a public safety concern, a lease violation, non-payment of rent pre-COVID. With the eviction moratorium that is very specific to protect individuals who are negative impacted by COVID, we have seen a significant reduction in the filings due to the eviction moratorium that was put in place last year and continues through June. So if you look at these rates, I'm going to talk to about 2020. The evictions filed in 2020 was 41% lower than the previous year. So the eviction moratorium has been extremely impactful to keeping people housed during this very trying time. And while this was happening, I'll be speaking next about the voter approved eviction prevention and rental assistance program that has kind of come as a result of some of this work or to help us continue in this space. So I'm sure you're familiar with the newer initiative. It was a very successful community volunteer-led initiative last year that brought to the voters a ballot measure, Ordinance 8412. It was approved by the voters in November, and what it establishes is a rental licensing tax that will be used, it will be assessed against all rental units in the city of Boulder with a rental license. And it establishes a rental licensing tax that will be used to operate and fully fund a program to provide housing supports, including rental assistance, legal representation, as well as community mediation. And the thing that is just really just so impactful and exciting about this is not just the community mediation and legal supports it provides, but for the first time ever, our community has a rental assistance source in perpetuity. So until COVID happened and we had all these federal funds coming to us through CDBG and CVRF, we've never had a steady source of rental assistance. Each year we would give EFA about $250,000 for their Keep Families Housed program, which was very specific to families at risk of homelessness. But we didn't have a broad source of rental assistance. And now, because of this ordinance and because of this program that has been established, we now have an ongoing source of $500 on upwards $1,000 each year to help us in supporting individuals who are at risk of eviction. So the dollars that are raised through the tax are going to the administrative costs of running the program. We have hired a coordinator. So this, to step back, this was approved back in November. As of January 1, the program was up and running. We had a contract in place with, my goodness, all of a sudden I spaced, but a local nonprofit that provides legal supports to individuals who are at risk of eviction. We focused our community mediation team, or refocused them to expand their abilities to serve this program. We've set up a rental assistance program, and now we've hired a coordinator, and we are in the process of recruiting for the tenant committee, as we'll be speaking about later tonight, I think. But just as a quick plug, we are recruiting, it's a tenant committee. It will be made up of 5 members of the community. You have to be a renter and you can't own any real property. But that committee will help us make sure this program is up and running in its most efficient and effective way and true to the intentions of the ordinance. And members of that committee will be paid $1,000 a year. So that was part of the ordinance that was passed, that this particular committee will be receiving $1,000 stipend. So the eviction newer has evolved into the Eviction Prevention and Rental Assistance Program. And it's just been a real opportunity for us to, I was describing it to somebody today that, it really is evolving into the backbone of the work that the city is doing to support people to maintain their housing. So we're able to create and preserve units, so we're providing housing, but this really helps people to be able to stay successful renters in their housing situations. And just to go a little bit deeper into the way it works is, so say somebody is at risk of eviction, they could call this number that you see on the screen, 303-441-3414. You can call if you, and we have somebody that answers that call, or they can leave a message and you'll get a call back. We have the ability to speak to people and provide bilingual services. They can also fill something out online to kind of talk about their circumstances, and they will be contacted by the coordinator, who will then help them navigate to really kind of provide navigation and case management to help an individual figure out where they should access resources that are most appropriate to them. So if their circumstances is rental assistance, is figuring out should they tap into the housing helpline that Kisa will be talking about, should they tap into EFA and the rental assistance they have, is their circumstance dire and they need rental assistance tomorrow, they might work from a small pot of money that we have held within the city that we can deploy as needed, or is there an opportunity for us to provide a mediator, or are we in a situation where legal consultation is needed? And then at the same time, so this is all pre-eviction court. Somebody has received a notice that they are potentially facing eviction. They make this call. There's this case management that goes up front. If they show up at the courts, we have a coordinator or two in person. We have 2 attorneys available and 2 mediators that are on site at the courts. They have been since the beginning of the year, and they work with the individual and will do on-site legal, evaluation. They'll provide mediation. They could even provide rental assistance on the spot to help resolve the situation in the moment. So one of the things that we're really excited to see is that prior to the Eviction Prevention Rental Assistance Program, which you'll hear us start referring to as EPRIS, is that typically we had really low tenant turnout at court, with about 50% would result in default evictions. Oops, did my camera just go out? Did you guys still see? Okay, I lost my viewing. Okay, but since beginning of January, with the EPRIS staff being available, having our nonprofit legal representation available, as well as our Longmont mediation services that partner with us, we are seeing 21% default evictions this year. So, just having that active, proactive, reaching out to people, making sure that they understand what the process is, making sure that they know their rights and what resources are available to them, we're already seeing significant success in how people are engaging with this system. That can be very daunting and confusing and stressful. So with the eviction prevention services, just one more thing just to wrap up. So here's what it basically looks like. Somebody calls, and here's just our data to date. What we're finding is that we have served since January 1, 64 individuals. What you see here is there's the variety, the kind of the spectrum of services they might receive. They might receive rental assistance. They might be connected with a mediator. They might receive legal representation. They might receive all 3. It's whatever their circumstances require to help them resolve the situation. And with that, I want to then transition to just the amount of rental assistance that is flowing in our community. Between all the sources that I talked about earlier, coming through the COVID recovery, CVRF funds, the next step will be the American Recovery Plan Act, our CDBG funds, even fundraising that EFA has done. There is a lot of rental assistance, and it is being provided and can be accessed through the City of Boulder, either through our older adult services or family services, and now the EPRIS program. Boulder Housing Partners has been successfully keeping people housed by accessing rental assistance to support their tenants, whether it's through the state or through the city, as well as Thistle Communities, Jewish Family Services, Left Behind Workers Fund, Centro de Amistad, EFA and the Housing Helpline, which Kisa will talk about in a second. But I was able to pull some information about EFA, which is just tremendous to see what they've done. Since COVID began back in March 2020, EFA has deployed close to $3 million in rental assistance to members of the City of Boulder community, as well as they do serve some communities in the mountains. And then they've also provided upwards of $178,000 in utility assistance. What they've seen is that they're serving about 42 households per week, and each of those households receives on average about $1,200 to help them with their housing needs. As for beneficiaries, information they provided is 61% are Latinx, 9% are seniors, and 66% are families with children. And in addition to what EFA is doing with their financial resources, they also do provide housing supports. And since COVID, they've been able to house 424 family members. That's 123 families that are experiencing or at risk of homelessness. And the sources of those funds, which, you know, it's great. We have the federal dollars, we have the state dollars, we have City of Boulder funds, but EFA was able to raise in private donations $2.4 million. That's helping them do this. So EFA has just been just a tremendous partner in community support through a really challenging time. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kisa. And I'll just do a quick introduction to that, is that last year when when the pandemic took hold and we were trying to very quickly figure out how to get resources to people most effectively and efficiently and meeting them where they're at, the Boulder County Housing and Human Services quickly rose to the occasion and established the Housing Helpline. That has really been kind of the point of contact that we send most people to, because they are just so resourceful in serving our community. So Kisa Kwambek is here with us for the Housing Helpline to talk about the work that they've been doing.
Thanks so much, Kristen. It really has been quite an amazing year to get to work with you and work with other folks at the City of Boulder. And I'm really happy to be here today to share a little bit about the Housing Helpline. So yes, as Kristen mentioned, the Housing Helpline has been in effect now for, we actually just celebrated its first birthday. That was very exciting. And we've been providing rent assistance using a variety of funds now for about a year for COVID impacted individuals. So this is, I just wanted to give an overview of kind of how folks get connected and what happens with the Housing Helpline. We get just a lot of questions around that. So mainly folks have there's two main ways that folks access the Housing Helpline. One is calling, and the other newest way is being able to email the Housing Helpline. So that information is there. When folks call, they leave a message, and our Housing Helpline staff returns that call and kind of reviews those colorful bubbles, which I'll talk through. And we are potentially moving to live calls, but it's managing phone systems remotely is still a fun challenge. So that one is still being worked through, but is a goal. The other way that folks can come in is to email the Housing Helpline, housinghelpline@bouldercounty.org. And then our staff will email back and send them a quick WUFU form, which goes over these kind of same colorful bubbles. Folks can also, if they're meeting with an eligibility technician, to apply for SNAP or Medicaid or TANF, and housing need is identified at that point. Our eligibility technicians also make direct referrals into our Housing Helpline. And then we just have such an amazing partnership with the mediation program, and Karen Armstrong and Jay Allen and Diane Evans, and they all refer directly into the Housing Helpline as well. And we try and prioritize those referrals, that especially for folks who are coming into eviction court, just knowing that that assistance needs to get out sooner than later. So whichever way people make it into the Housing Helpline, our staff or the WUFU form kind of goes over their current housing situation, what the need is. We still do have to verify that they've been financially impacted by COVID. We do have the income limit of 80% AMI, which I think we've only seen a couple households come through that are kind of close to that, but typically folks have been under 50% AMI. Our staff talks about the documents that are required. We are fortunate enough to be direct recipients of the U.S. Treasury rent assistance funds, and those do require a bit more documentation than we have previously collected. So we just like to be really clear about what folks are going to need to get to us. And then our current application process is mainly through DocuSign. So either the participant can complete that DocuSign application on their mobile device or iPad or computer. And if there are any digital kind of divide issues where that's not going to be a successful way for someone to complete an application, our staff can also do that with them over the phone. So we try and make as many ways in as we can. But that's the general housing helpline overview. And perfect, great timing. So this is a graph of, and I know it's a little hard to read, but mainly it's just the kind of volume to look at. This is the inquiries that our housing helpline has received over the last year, just that kind of number. I think it's by week. So you can see there has been certainly an increase over the last year, and it doesn't seem to be going anywhere right now. Folks are definitely still in need of assistance. There's a lot more colors at the beginning of it because at the very beginning of COVID, we were really trying to stretch our funds as much as we could. We were using our local human services safety net to assist. We were sending people to the Area Agency on Aging and EFA and Our Center, and just trying to find the best places folks could go to spread our limited resources as much as we could. But moving into the last month or so, we have been able to refer even more people in for emergency assistance. Just again, thanks to the U.S. Treasury funds, has really increased our ability to provide assistance. And really ultimately opened up eligibility criteria in some ways. So we've been very excited about that. So there have been, I think that 3,800 calls was as of last week. We just hit over 4,000 this week. So that's really exciting. We get about 75, 78 calls a week, and about 36% are Spanish speakers. So we feel like we are definitely hitting a lot of different parts of our community. As far as spending so far this year, we've spent about we've spent 1.3 million in rent assistance dollars. Just about a third of that has been attributed to the U.S. Treasury dollars. And because we are able to provide a little bit more assistance with that, households, the 103 households we've helped with the U.S. Treasury dollars, it's been about $5,000-ish per household because we're able to help with most of the arrears and then forward 3 months, up to 3 months. So we can really help people feel secure in their housing for a little bit longer and then not have to call back the housing helpline and go through the process all over again. So it's been really exciting that we've been able to extend assistance a little bit more and hopefully keep some more folks housed. So I think that's all the data that I have on that.
Okay. Well, thanks, Kisa.
Yeah.
I would just add, so the county has just been a tremendous partner, and she's mentioning the U.S. Treasury dollars. So the county did come, I think it's like a little over $10 million that the county received specific to housing supports that the county will be administering primarily through the housing helpline, I believe. Does that sound correct? So in addition to all the other dollars I was talking about, the county also has that source of funding too. So yeah,
we're very fortunate to receive that money.
Yeah, so that's been great. The other thing I just wanted to hit the point on, so we recognize that not everybody in our community is comfortable accessing services of any kind through the county or through the city or even EFA. And so we've been very intentional this past year in that we have set up funding sources with the Workers Left Behind Fund, as well as Centro de Amistad. So we are trying to be very thoughtful about meeting people where they're at and where they're most comfortable. So we've been working with a variety of agencies, out Boulder as well, to reach people where they're most comfortable going for help. The thing that has been really interesting is we've tapped into people that have never had to go through this before. It's kind of a new world for a lot of the people that we are seeing come through our doors and making these calls, and it's pretty traumatic and or humbling. I don't even know what to call it for a lot of people. And so there's a lot of there's a lot of compassion that our I don't even know what to call them, our program coordinators and case managers and people that are answering the calls are having to offer to people as they're navigating a very difficult time. So that we've been spending a lot of time really supporting our team members to make sure that they are prepared and able to be most effective in those really tough circumstances. So one more slide and then we'll open it up to questions. So the other thing, so we've talked about that we provide housing, we provide rental assistance, we provide the resources to help people stay in housing. Another source of housing supports that we provide that is really important is through our community relations and our community mediation and resolution center. We are able to help people, help protect people. So if somebody feels that their human rights are being violated, we have a team that is there to help somebody navigate that, to assess the situation, to investigate the situation. If somebody feels that they are being, their fair housing rights are being violated or they're not being rented to for whatever because they're in a protected class. And so we actually have a team in HHS that is part of what they do is really help people protect their rights when it comes to housing options. And then we've talked about the community mediation team, but it goes beyond just eviction prevention. Before all of this, it was a little bit of eviction prevention, but it's also just, kind of that tenant landlord conflict that might occur or neighbor to neighbor conflict that can make a housing situation extremely stressful to the point where somebody isn't comfortable or feeling safe in their home. And so we have community mediators on staff that will be a neutral mediator to help people navigate those situations. Or if it comes to it, to help them navigate to an elegant exit strategy and try to figure out, where that person might land next. And so this is just another piece of the variety of supports that we provide, and similar supports like this are provided from the city of Longmont as well. So that is what we have to share tonight. Happy to answer any questions about what is currently available. And also, we are really committed to evolving and improving our work and doing what is most effective and helpful to our community to ensure that they have safe and stable housing. And so just really invite the conversation tonight to help inform our work moving forward. And with that, I will be quiet and mute myself and answer questions.
Thank you so much, both of you, for the presentation. I want to open up to the board and to the public. If anyone has questions, please feel free to raise your hand. There's a raise your hand function if you, let me see, if you actually don't know.
It's under reactions on the bottom.
Yeah, there you go.
On reactions, there's the option to raise hand.
Yeah. Cool, Michael. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, hi, Michael Lucchese, new to the board. Two questions. One is just a clarification. You threw a lot of great numbers out there. I'm wondering, of those, what are specific to COVID support? Like you mentioned, the county receiving $10 million last year from federal sources. And the second question, a little more general. I mean, we've all evolved our DEI and GenI plans in the last year. How is Boulder's housing policy evolving in relation to that very big issue? There's a couple of big questions.
Well, I'm actually I can take a pass on the first one. I'm gonna ask Jay, who's our housing policy program manager, to help me answer the second one. But so when it comes to the dollars that I mentioned, what I can speak to right now is that we received, when it comes specific to the City of Boulder Housing and Human Services and what was made available to us to support housing, that comes in to about 3.5 million that we had available to us to do the variety of things that we described. But that also doesn't take into account for the ARPA funds, that 21 million that's coming to the city that we have not defined the use of those dollars yet. So there's more to come. And then, so all of that has been in response to the pandemic. Prior to this, the city's housing dollars was limited to our federal funds, the CDBG dollars and the home fund dollars, which are about 2 million a year. And then also our affordable housing fund and our CHAP dollars, which comes in, it varies between 9 to 15 million a year. And those were all very specifically used to create and preserve housing opportunities. And that's why the newer initiative that is now the Eviction Prevention Rental Assistance is such a profound game changer for us in the rental assistance, because once the money from the COVID relief dollars and the pandemic response dollars is gone, we now have this steady source and perpetuity of rental assistance moving forward. So that's kind of a convoluted answer. I could, write it all up and send it to you so it's a little bit clearer, but a lot of the dollars that I threw at you were very specific to the pandemic. And then can you restate your second question about housing policy? How are we evolving our housing policy?
How has that evolved in response to various DEI initiatives, diversity, equity, inclusion, in the last year? Has it evolved?
I'm so, what is DEI? Am I?
Diversity, equity, and inclusion, its efforts
Oh,
to, create greater social justice, greater diversity,
of course.
address populations that have been overlooked previously or prejudiced against, and so forth.
Right. Really appreciate that question. So the city is very committed to our racial equity work across the board, whether it's internal or external. We have actually, I think it would be great to bring a presentation to you that one of our team members and Jay has recently worked on, looking at Boulder's history, development and housing history, and how that has defined our diversity or lack thereof diversity. And one of the things that we can say is that our investment in affordable housing has contributed to the diversity of our community as while limited. So we see that a lot of our work and our investments in making sure that diverse populations can live in Boulder has supported that, but we got a long ways to go. And we recognize that, and we are committed to that work. But I think it'd be really interesting for the HAB to hear this recent presentation, because it's a really great conversation starter. Well, not starter, it's very informing to the conversation. And I think it'd be really helpful to kind of help us as we're navigating how we adjust some of our policies. But Jay, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, Michael, that's a great question. And Kristen's right. I think next month I'll be suggesting that HAB spend at least half the meeting talking about that issue specifically within the context of the history that you're going to hear from Clay Fong. So I would say let's talk about it more then. Is that all right?
Am I up?
Yeah, I wasn't sure, Jay, I wasn't sure you were done, but yeah, Ginger, please go ahead. Yeah, thank you, Michael, for your question. Go ahead, Ginger.
Sorry, guys, I was too lazy to pull out my camera.
You're so good. Go ahead.
Okay, good. Well, I guess my question has partly been answered, but I came up from Colorado Springs in 2019, and the difference in homelessness is and I was in Denver for a year too, so I've seen kind of all parts. I was wondering how you, as leaders in Boulder, how do you see Boulder's homeless population compared to Denver or even the country?
Thanks, Ginger. Go ahead, Kristen.
Thanks, Charlotte. That's a tough question to answer because I don't know if I'm the right person or can really assess, besides anecdotally in my own personal experience of being in Denver or being in other parts of the country. I can tell you that our city of Boulder, just last night, there was a very long discussion with city council at a study session about some of the work that we're doing to just address some of the challenges in our community and serving our individuals who are experiencing homelessness or are at risk of homelessness, and kind of just some of the other community needs in our community. So trying to find the balance there. On May 25th, there is going to be a presentation to City Council. It was going to be next Tuesday, but I think I just saw that it got changed to May 25th. That Kurt Fernhaber, our director, and Vicki Ebner, who is our homelessness program coordinator, will be doing their annual update on our homelessness initiatives and work. And so I think that would be a really great conversation for you to tune in on when they go to City Council, because I think they would be better positioned to answer anything really specific to homelessness. So I can also say, like, while I presented it, that our work works to address the spectrum of housing needs. Really, the information I was providing tonight is more specific to individuals who are housed versus in maintaining housing versus our initiatives that are really working to support individuals who are at risk of or are experiencing homelessness.
Thanks, Kristen. Ginger, here, let me see. Ginger, did that answer your question, or do you have any follow-ups? I just want to.
Well, no, I think I will tune into that as well. But so you're saying the program, what you've been presenting here is not really, it's not geared for homelessness. It's not geared for people who are homeless, period. Like, I couldn't go to neighbor Bob. Well, he is our neighbor, but he's totally homeless. I couldn't go to him and say, you know, call this and, you know, they'll help you out. Or could I?
There are other access points that I would say would be more appropriate for somebody that is at risk of or experiencing homelessness.
Okay.
And we could provide that information. I don't have it readily available to, project it tonight.
But as far as ESPRA,
we kind of have a different path that has different sorts of resources. And that's not because we're trying to separate it. Part of it has to do with the funding sources and what they're intended to do. And so a lot of the funding that we talked about tonight is very specific to keeping people housed, rental assistance for people that are in housing and maintaining housing. A lot of the resources that go to support our individuals who are experiencing homelessness or, transitional housing might be an option. It's a different source of funding than what we're speaking to tonight. So it's not, it's very, it's all about housing, and we all are committed to housing being a very critical issue in our community. It's just, it's a little bit of a different approach, but happy to talk to you or anybody else about how to best get yours into the right.
No, that totally explains it. But ESPRA, it sounds to me, is more prevention. Keep people from being homeless, period. Right?
Correct.
Okay. Got it.
Great. Thanks, Ginger, and thanks, Kristen. I got notice that David, if you're listening, you had a question. Do you still have a question that you wanted to ask? If so, you can just raise your hand or.
You're talking to me?
David Adamson. Yes, I am. Did you have a question?
Well,
Corey
I have so many, but I'll talk a little bit later, but I have one question for Kristen, if I
Great.
could, please.
Yeah, please.
Hey, Kristen, thank you for all your work and for everyone's service. So appreciate you all. Could you talk a little bit about the middle income housing strategy? How many middle income units we have added? You know, that was a big priority starting in 2017. So how many, especially deed restricted middle income housing units, the #1 priority in the Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan? How many have been added? And since I know that it's very few, you know, why is that? And I'm also just interested in why you sold the co-housing co-op unit over at Pollard. So I just love it if you could talk about those two things. Thank
Sure.
you.
So I will, so we share the commitment to middle income housing. The quick answer as to why we haven't moved more quickly in achieving that specific goal is really comes down to resourcing. When it comes to being able to create and preserve lower and moderate income housing opportunities, there are so many subsidies and so many resources out there that it's much easier to access funding in order to achieve those outcomes. So we were able to step into a situation with a partner where we can bring $1 million, $2 million to a deal, and then they're able to leverage $8, $9, $12, $15 million that they need to create that affordable housing option through low-income housing tax credits, private activity bonds. So the way that the market is structured right now really goes to support those lower income housing options. So that middle income housing option, it's a really tough nut to crack. And we are committed to figuring that out. And so I will say the first step in that right direction is we are actually expanding our team right now. We are hiring an additional person to give us the capacity that we need in-house to really dive very deeply into that. And so we're currently hiring to bring somebody on so our homeownership team can expand our work in that area and help us really, because that's really where the middle income space is for us, is around ownership. The market takes care of middle income rental. There isn't really a need for us to play a role in that. But when it comes to middle income ownership, there is an opportunity for government to partner and be in that conversation and in that opportunity. And so it really is kind of building up our internal capacity to do that, and then to figure out kind of the financial resourcing of that on any day. It's challenging without those federal subsidies available to us. And Jay, you speak to the third part of the question.
What was the third part, David?
Just why did we sell at Pollard? There was I kind of know the answer, but there was a part of one of the units
Right
there at Pollard was reserved for co-housing and co-op, and it would seem to be progressing well financially, but maybe you could just say the city sold it because we ran out of money, or why was that sold?
I would say there were lots of requests and demands and hopes for that site. It was sort of everything, but including the kitchen sink. And at some point we had to focus our efforts and our resources, and that was on what we ended up with. It has to do with what the market is willing to provide at the time. But in terms of the middle income, I would say stay tuned. I think there's some interesting stuff that we're gonna discuss with HAB and also with Planning Board. Planning Board wants to talk about middle income as part of their retreat and what are the tools that might be available to them. So I think that's an interesting conversation. We're also looking at bringing potentially a speaker, national speaker, to talk about middle income housing later this spring or summer. And we're trying to figure out how to involve HAB in that as well.
Mm-hmm.
I would just add really quickly to middle income, especially ownership, is a priority of our county commissioners. And so I think there is going to be even more of a regional conversation as to how to meet that need. So it goes beyond just the city of Boulder, where there's, limitations that we're all aware of maybe looking at this more regionally. So that might be another venue to express that type of support is for the county to help us kind of solve for that.
Mm-hmm. David, do you have a follow-up question?
Yes, I do. And I thank you so much for that. I wanted to follow up on the good work we did in the Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan with Jay and others to create that neighborhood infill pilot. And I'm the executive director of Goose Creek Community Land Trust, and we've been working to create this 3-block co-housing community on North Street, and then have been active in doing similar kind of mostly appreciation restricted, mostly for sale, mostly car share units, at Alpine Balsam as well. And so the pilot was how can we put more people in the city without cars in a beautiful way, in the same scale that the existing housing is, so that there's no blocking of mountain views and there's no added cars. We feel this would be, a net win for everyone. And that's the frame we're trying to suggest, is that, adding in housing for the people that desperately need it along all the spectrums enriches everyone's life. I'm impoverished by not having a more diverse community. My kids are impoverished. We all
David,
lose.
David, is this a question, or do you want to
Yes,
save the comments for this?
Well, okay. I was just taking that, but
Okay.
so my question was, we presented to council and we went through the midterm update a way to do this kind of housing without a subsidy. And it had a full discussion with staff, the planning board, and council. And they determined, instead of telling us at the beginning, they determined that, oh, this can't be done in the midterm update. This is too important. Anyway, I'm just looking for your advice. Here we are trying to provide the housing the city needs without a subsidy. And, I've talked with you about it. I've talked with Kurt about it. I've talked to many staff folks about it. And, the feeling was, well, we just don't have the resources for that. So I'm just wondering if we can work with ARPA funds to do this pilot. And I want to ask everyone to look particularly at the Strong Suburbs podcast within the Strong Towns, Dr. Samuel Hughes' proposal for the UK, where they let every street, every neighborhood gets to determine how they are going to add the housing the city needs. It's such an exciting idea that I think helps solve the problem we have in this town, where people are against and people are for. So my question is, what do you advise us housing advocates who see that housing is good for everyone throughout the city? We need to work together. People who are concerned about housing have good reasons. They're worried about congestion. They're worried about pollution. They're worried about crime, except people have good reasons, but we still need housing. So let's figure out how much housing do we need? Because right now there's no middle income housing. We have a huge influx of providing luxury housing for out of town people. That's mostly what planning staff does. I mean, a lot of what planning staff does is just permit more luxury townhomes. So what's your advice to us in the housing community that want to see housing is good for everyone, see everyone has a piece of the truth about this? Folks who are worried have good reasons for that. My neighbors, I understand people's concerns. And our idea is that the city would be better for all of us if we go to a more compact and, a much less car dominated city.
All right.
So what's your advice to us to move forward on that pilot idea that's in the Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan?
Go ahead, Kristen. We need the answers.
Thank you. Sorry for the long-windedness.
Thanks, David.
You know, I think we are all we're all on the same team trying to figure this out. And I wish there were quick answers and there were quick solutions for us to, these are super hard situations that we're trying to solve. And I know that's not a satisfactory answer in any way, David, but I think it's just, we just keep doing what we're doing and more of it and look for those opportunities. You mentioned ARPA. I don't know of those dollars. We're still trying to get direction from the U.S. Department of Treasury, how those dollars can be used. But, you know, looking for those opportunities, you're thinking creatively, and that's helpful to us as we're thinking about this. But we've got to keep plugging away at it. And as Jay has said, you know, there is definitely an uptick in the conversation. It's the first time that I've heard our county commissioners talking about it, and they're talking about it a lot, about middle income, about ownership. And so I think there is a little bit of a change in the chatter. And so I think we just got to keep kind of plugging away at it.
I just want to add, just to complete, you know, the way we're doing it is it's simply not working, Kristen. You know, it's not. I mean, every piece of land in our town is becoming a luxury townhome. So I just
David,
want, okay, I'm
David,
just going to 10
and
seconds
no-
and I'm done. 10
Okay,
seconds.
I'm
I'm
gonna-
done. Let's just use open space as our example. We didn't compromise on open space. We said, let's get this open space. We can do the same thing for middle income housing, but we have to say we're going to do that. And we're not just going to sell luxury townhomes. Thank you.
And David, I want you to speak more, but I want you to speak when we open it up.
Okay, sorry. I didn't
so
understand
good.
the format.
You're fine. You're fine. You're so fine. I want to hear more, but we're just going through questions, but so I don't want to hold individuals up more. I know there are people who want to speak. I just have a really quick question for Kristen. I'm sorry, everyone. We'll move on in 1 second, but you know, Kristen, you talked a lot about how there is a lack of funding for these different programs, right? For middle income housing, for you know, resources is an issue. Has the department compiled a report showing the dearth of funds and what's needed to support these different programs, and presented that to council and said, hey, we need this much for this program, the middle income housing program. We need this much for, you know, homelessness strategies, et cetera. Is that a report? Like, are there some numbers that, you know, you're giving to council to work with? In terms of like allocation of funds?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I think that's and there's a lot of versions of that out there. So I would say when it comes to you know, one of the things I'll start by saying with rental assistance right now, which is a very important part of our spectrum of supports, we're kind of overflowing in rental assistance with all the federal funds that are coming to us, but those are very specific in their use. So we can't take those dollars and then go build a unit. That's not how they're designed. So we have millions and millions of dollars coming at us, which is great. But, you know, it's very specific as to who can use it and how it can be used. So we're really pretty well set for that. When it comes to those dollars that you're talking about as to what it needs to meet our community needs in terms of new housing opportunities, that conversation has happened at the regional level. So with the Boulder County Regional Housing Partnership, we have actually applied the math to that. And we know that we need an additional $40 million a year in order for us to meet our affordable housing goals across the region. And a conversation that we started last year, we were looking at doing was the potential for a ballot measure. There was traction towards this going to the ballot for a sales tax, property tax increase, and then the pandemic hit. So we are kind of resurrecting that conversation as to what that would look like. But there is math out there that tells us how much we need in order to achieve these goals. It is upwards to $40 million a year regionally.
Okay, thank you. Danny, I see you have a question. Go ahead.
Yeah. Am I on? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. So Chris, just to clarify what you're saying too, you know, just for a lot of the comments that I just heard, I mean, a lot of the money that's coming is not very discretionary in terms of what the city can do with it, right? And then the other part is it's also very finite in terms of, you know, it's in response to the pandemic, and it's not something that's going to become a source of revenues moving forward. So those are the things that you're wrestling with that, right? And the other thing too, and I just, from my first year on HAB, we spent a lot of time talking about all the efforts that were going into trying to address middle income housing and financial challenges, that entailed those efforts, that were entailed with those efforts. But then the pandemic hit. But I think that there are certainly a lot of different approaches that the city's been taking with all that stuff. So I just want to make that point clear, because I heard a lot of things, and nothing's easy, and certainly it always comes down to money and budget. But I think from my perspective, I've seen the city really try to take that on, as well as take on all these other aspects. We just had comments regarding what funds are available for concerns with homelessness, right? And then we have middle income housing. Then we have rental assistance and eviction relief, and all these things are pretty demanding. And so I think the city's done a good job of trying to address these. You can always do better, and we're trying to, but I just want to make that point.
Thank you.
Thanks, Danny. Are there any additional questions before we move to open comment? Okay. Okay, great. Sorry. Okay, great. Seeing none, I'd love to move on to open comment and let folks speak. Remember that what you're going to share will definitely impact where the board places emphasis with regards to research and inform recommendations that we may make to council. So we're very excited to hear what you have to say, and there are questions from the board after folks speak. I'd love for folks to come with questions. So I'm happy to call on people based on who entered the waiting room first, but I figured it'd just be easiest if you know how to raise your hand. Does everyone know how to raise? I'm nervous that people don't know how to raise their hand. That's my concern. I see a thumbs up. Jay, how do you suggest I do this
well, ask people to raise their hands, and then
if you
through them, I would say ask anyone else who would like to speak. If
you want to try to raise your hand, that'd be great. If not, I know that you're all here to speak. So there's Rebecca. Let me just message her real quick. She was in need of closed caption. Ready for you. I just messaged Rebecca. So let me see. I'm going to ask her to unmute. There she is. Hang on, Rebecca. Hang on one second. Jay, do you want to go through rules before I open it up? I'm sorry, I totally messed that up. I'm going to mute you quickly so that Jay can go through rules. Smiley face. Thanks everyone for your patience. Go ahead, Jay.
So I'll go over this very quickly. I think everybody is fairly familiar with the city's rules, but we do have some rules just because in this virtual environment, trying to strike a balance between meaningful and transparent engagement, as well as online security. So there are a couple of rules about, try not to be disruptful, interfering with the meeting. We've all been very respectful so far. I don't think that's going to be a problem. We will limit time for speaking, 3 minutes, but I am just going to keep it very informal. And then once you reach 3 minutes, I might just raise my hand just to let folks know that you're running a little bit long. And then we do ask you that you register by your real name and not any sort of pseudonym. And then also do not turn on your video, please, just audio. So only city officials, employees, and invited speakers may be able to share video. And Charlotte's going to enforce all these rules. And the chat function, typically we only allow that for technical questions. But if you are more comfortable asking questions via chat, and it sounds like Charlotte, you're already doing that, please feel free. And then same thing with screen sharing. So that's limited as well to just staff. So that's it. Those are the rules.
Great. Thanks, Jay.
Let me see.
I'm gonna stop sharing your screen.
Yeah, how do I do that now? I don't, oh, there it is.
Okay, great. Okay, there we go. I'm gonna ask Rebecca to unmute herself again. And then if folks want to speak, please just raise your hand so I can keep track of, the list of speakers. You can also just message me if you'd like to speak and I can call on you directly. That's fine too. So Jay, if you want to pull up the timer, Rebecca, I have unmuted you. In future meetings, we are going to work on getting closed captions just to make sure the meeting is accessible to everyone. So Jay is pulling up the timer. Are you pulling it up?
I am now.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay,
Please.
do I
go
start?
ahead.
Do I start or wait?
Yep, you can start.
Oh, okay. I just got a last minute invitation to be here, so I'm not really quite sure how this goes. I was told that the topic was housing insecurity or also lived experience with affordable housing. So I'm not sure about that, about what topic I'm supposed to be responding to, but I will just plug ahead anyway. My name is Rebecca Herr. I have lived in Boulder for 48 years since 1973. I moved here from growing up in Denver. I moved here to go to University of Colorado, and I've lived here ever since. Of those 48 years, about 3 years I lived here not as a renter. So for about 45 years, I have been a renter in Boulder. And that's because I never got to a place where I had enough money to buy into the housing market. So I lived and worked in Boulder. I was married. I have a daughter. We got divorced. I've lived here my whole life. I worked in book publishing. My income went up as I continued to work, but it never went up as quickly as my housing costs went up. And I just kept thinking that, the older you get, the more money you earn, and that I would be able to maybe buy a house later. Never happened. I also didn't foresee that my industry would collapse in the late 90s, where the book publishing jobs just went away in the course of about 5 years. So all that experience that I had in publishing now required that I move somewhere else if I wanted to make the big bucks in that field. So I decided to live in Boulder instead of living somewhere else and making a good living and being financially sustainable. So I stayed here. I changed jobs. The new field I got into, disability services, was not lucrative at all. And in 2005, I applied for Social Security disability. I'm deaf. I got my first hearing aids at age 21. My hearing has progressively declined, and so now I'm at the level that's called deaf. I cannot understand human speech without visual information. So that means I cannot talk on, I can talk on the telephone, but I cannot hear on the telephone. So life changes a whole lot when you can't talk on the telephone or hear on the telephone. And by the way, thank you very much for putting in the housing helpline, putting an email address along with the telephone number. That is just wonderful. I'm very happy to see that you did that. Okay, so I ended up poor and I didn't plan it. I came to Boulder middle class and I ended up poor. My income now is under $16,000 a year. I received subsidized housing, Section 8 housing choice voucher. And that is the only reason that I am allowed to stay in Boulder. I love this town like nobody's business. I want to go old and die here. I never want to live anywhere else. But for the last 20 years, people have told me that I have to move away from Boulder because I can't afford to live here anymore. And I'm stubborn and I'm not leaving. But I've had to accept more and more of my income going towards housing. The older I got. Then when I finally have subsidized housing, for the first time in my life in Boulder, I'm paying 1/3 of my income for rent. I didn't realize it at the time, but now I can look back on my life and see the cumulative effect of living in housing that is not affordable. Every year you lose ground and you kind of don't realize it because you keep thinking it'll get better. You keep thinking you'll get a raise. And my rent would increase almost every year. And if it increased by $100 or more, I would have to move. I've lived in 24 places in 48 years living in Boulder because I had to move so often when the rent went up. And I always thought I would get ahead and I never did. And now being old and being poor is completely humiliating. My education didn't prevent this. My hard work didn't prevent this. And I feel when I go to housing meetings on affordable housing for projects like the Alpine Balsam thing, I see people there who are homeowners who don't, on some level, don't believe I should be living in Boulder anymore. And I feel that shame and I feel that stigma because I failed to accumulate money. And it was housing that caused this to happen. I don't think young people and middle-aged people realize the erosion of their earning power that happens in this town. My daughter moved away from Boulder. She cannot afford to move back here. That means she can't take care of me as I grow older. My friends can't afford to live here. I miss the diversity in Boulder that we used to have when people could afford the housing here. As a senior, I live in a basement apartment that is uninsulated. It's really cold in the winter. When the wind blows, my curtains move inside my apartment. I have 4 windows and only one of them is energy efficient and the other 3 leak heat. I cannot get my apartment weatherized by the weatherization program because it's already been weatherized at some point in the past. So my heating bills are outrageous in the winter. I would like to move out of this basement apartment. I would like to move above ground. My voucher is for $1,200 a month, and it's almost impossible to find a 1-bedroom apartment for that in Boulder. So I'm stuck here waiting for the next flood and suffering through cold winters. The location is perfect in central Boulder. I would love to find affordable housing in central Boulder. I would love to live in the Alpine Balsam project, but it looks like that's moving on from the idea of affordable senior housing. I went to every meeting I could to request that. I also wish that my voucher would allow me to have roommates. I would like to live with other people. It's isolating growing old alone. I would love to be able to have the Golden Girls model of older people sharing housing together. I would love to live with other older people helping each other out. I'm 65. I could help out other people that are older than me. Later on, I'll be older and I would appreciate having a 65-year-old living with me. I would love to be able to share housing, but I'm not allowed to do that. It would be cheaper. I could get better quality of housing. I could probably not live in the basement, but that's not an option. I know it's a federal issue with the vouchers, but gosh, that would solve a whole lot of problems in this town if we could divvy up some of these larger houses among low-income seniors. So I guess that's probably about enough for now, huh? I've exceeded the time, I'm pretty sure.
You're good.
So anyway, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I do appreciate it.
Rebecca, I'm going to message her and let her know that we have closed captioning now. Everyone at the bottom of your screen, if you see that Corey.
Hey, look at that.
Do
Okay.
you see that? Yeah, great. Yeah,
Hey,
want to make sure you
sick.
saw that. We figured
Okay.
it out.
Well, thank you. I
Thank
do
you,
appreciate it.
Corey.
Yeah, thanks, Corey. So great. Well, thank you,
You're welcome.
Rebecca. If anyone has any board members have questions now, great. If can always ask questions later as well. Right. Let's see. If there are any other folks who would like to speak, if you're able to raise your hands, that would be so great. I can also just call on you, but I don't want to spook you by calling on you. Let's see. Let's see.
Charlotte,
Yeah.
can I make a suggestion?
Please.
Maybe, because I know sometimes when I'm on meetings on my phone, I can't raise my hand. The feature's not available to me, or I don't know how to access it. So maybe calling a person's name and unmuting them for a second and just saying, would you like to speak or not? And then potentially that way we don't, we can just check in with people instead of potentially missing somebody because they can't raise their hand.
I like that. Yeah, that's good. Someone who came into the waiting room shortly at near the beginning was Nicole. So I'm going to unmute you, Nicole, and see if you'd like to speak.
I'm just listening and learning.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, of course. Okay, no worries. Let's see. Gail. Gail, I'm going to unmute you. See if you would like to speak.
Sure. I don't have a whole lot to say. I'm Gail Smith. I, like Rebecca, am a member of the Participant Advisory Council, EFA. Participant Advisory Council is people who use EFA services. I use their food bank in particular. And so then we do monthly meetings with the upper management in EFA, with the CEO of EFA, and we give them our points of view. So I was asked to join this meeting and I guess give you guys my point of view. I don't think this is going to take 3 minutes, but I've lived in Boulder for 10 years as of next month. I love it. I've lived both coasts in the US and in between. I've lived San Francisco, I've lived Nolens, I grew up right outside Washington, DC, and there's no place I'd rather live in the United States than Boulder. And I can afford to live here because I am living in poverty. So I live in poverty housing where if you don't make any money, you don't pay any rent, and I love that. I don't love where I live, like my housing in particular, but I do love being able to live in Boulder. I guess I have a question for the Housing Advisory Board, which is it's a DEI question, which is do all of you identify as Caucasian? I did a whole bunch of research before this and I found out that Boulder is 79.8% white, 7.38% Hispanic. And that's a big deal. A lot of EFA's people, as you saw from the slides at the beginning, people who use EFA, I am Caucasian for the record, but I know that a lot of EFA's participants are Hispanic, so it would be nice, I think, for them to know that that the Housing Advisory Board has a Hispanic member. And I think I'll just also express my real surprise. I knew about that we were working for affordable housing. I had no idea that what was considered affordable housing in Boulder included everything from homeless shelters to middle income housing. So I identify with David in that way. I was really surprised that poverty, like homeless shelters, are included. Like they just lump that in. So you can have like all the money going to homeless shelters and then like 2% of that could be for affordable housing. So I found that very surprising. I do hope that raises, and I'm interested to know where that number came from. Where did that goal of 15% come from? So those are my two questions to the HAB. One, is anyone not identify as Caucasian? And two, where does the 15% number come from? Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Gail. I guess I'll open it up to the board. I am very Caucasian. Yep. Yeah. Other board members, you can just unmute yourself. Thanks.
Do you want me to answer the second question? Or are you still on the first one?
Yeah, Jay, that's fine. Go ahead.
So the 15% goal started by City Council. The original goal was 10% back in 2000. And it was interesting. I talked to one of the council members and it was just kind of a finger in the air. It seemed like a good number to strive for. There wasn't a whole lot of science behind it, but it made sense. They recognized that, you know, a lot of the people that were providing important services in the community, that were an important part of the community, weren't able to live in Boulder and weren't able to participate as full members of the community. And so there was a desire that we wanted to impact that. So they came up with the 10% goal. And then about 3 years ago, we were getting close. We were at 8.4%. So we were getting close to that 10%. So we raised it to 15. And the discussion was, we wanted something aspirational, you know, something that that was hopeful, yet we also wanted something that was a bit realistic, that we knew that we could accomplish at some point in the future. And we landed at 15, and maybe we'll revisit that again in another 3 or 5 years, but a bit of the history.
Thanks, Jay. And I definitely, you know, heed the comments about diversity represented on these boards. And I'm hoping that's something that, you know, when future appointments are made, that's, you know, placed, you know, there's emphasis placed on that, you know, there should be greater diversity in positions of power. So I heed those comments, but I think this is a mostly white board. So, yeah, are there any questions for Gail or comments? Cool. Well, let me see. I want to see if other people want to speak. I'm gonna unmute Pierce and see if they'd like to speak. Let's see if I can do this.
Hello, thank you.
Hi.
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, welcome. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me. Boulder resident and voter here. Yeah, I just want to voice my complete and unconditional support for universal housing and an abolition to the camping ban in favor of bedrooms are for people, just making housing as accessible as possible and having absolutely no restrictions on it, including people being able to camp where they are able to safely and physically without any restrictions on that. The idea that I work with Boulder Safe. I distribute food and supplies to unhoused people, and the idea that one of the days that we were scheduled to distribute such food and supplies, the encampment was cleared to make room for a vigil for unhoused people who passed that year. That really pissed me off. Not to mention all the unhoused people. So in addition to the ethnic and racial diversity, I also want to voice that I want to see an unhoused person on this board. I want to see representation that stretches across class as well as race. And I want to end it in that way so that we can get everyone shelter, which is one of the basic human rights as declared by the United Nations. And the idea that Boulder's not doing everything it can to provide that, I consider to be a violation of human rights. And the idea that the bedrooms for people did in fact pass was voted in by the public, but then was blocked by the council. That that very much pissed me off. I'm really tired of the love, light, and private property mentality that Boulder has. And I just want it to be known that I am one person, at least, who is in full support of unconditional free shelter for all, with a ban on camping bans and all of that.
Thank you. You still have more time if you want to keep speaking. You don't have to.
I mean, I'll always take a soapbox. That's just, yeah, full communism, abolish the police, defund the police, stop all of this nonsense of right-wing bullshit is what I have to say.
Thanks, Pierce.
You're welcome.
Appreciate you coming. So I'm just letting some folks in here. Great. Awesome. Okay, awesome. Sorry, while I was just letting some folks in, are there any questions for Pierce from other members of the board? I will say that because there are going to be some vacant seats on HAB after this meeting, actually, Jay, do you know if council is going to do like a mid-year appointment of a member or two?
It's possible, but it's likely it won't happen for several months. If there are multiple vacancies, then they might do a special appointment, but it's also possible they may just wait till next spring.
Okay. Okay, got it. Okay, thanks.
Can I just add, I mean, the city has identified increasing diversity on our boards and commissions as a priority.
Yeah.
And we are discussing it, trying to figure out ways. The challenge is not necessarily selecting, but the challenge is the people who applies. So we don't get a lot of diversity in the application for council to choose from. That's the challenge.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I know that this has been a discussion of, compensation has been, it's been, circulating with regards to city council. And I know that if individuals had more incentive to, volunteer their time, that would definitely increase diversity, what this meeting's 4 hours a month, plus there's, additional research that can be, investment that can be put in. Not everyone has that time. So I definitely recognize that that's a limitation. So yeah, Mason.
Yeah, Jay, I hear you, and I absolutely agree with what you're saying too, Charlotte. However, the last 3/4 years I've sat through all of the board interviews as well as read their applications, and I can tell you that we had quite a few individuals of color that applied that were also students that were literally not chosen. And to me, when I see that, I'm challenged by these boards when I'm seeing perfectly good candidates who are either connected to CU or for some other reason, which is only held within council, are not being chosen. That's a bit of a pill to swallow. One of the reasons why I'm on this board was because of the mandate of having a renter. And as a renter, we had a position to fill, which mandated and forced the hand of individuals who were looking at people. But I know even on the year that I applied, I was the only renter. And so they had nobody else to choose from. Thankfully, the years that followed, there were qualified candidates and qualified candidates of color, but I would say that there was a political motivation for other things. So yeah, hopefully we've got a lot of work to do in those areas for sure.
Yeah. Let's see. I see some new folks join the meeting, so let's see. Let me just go through here. I'm not sure if I asked Beverly if Beverly wanted to speak, so let me just try to unmute Beverly. Let's see. I'm not sure if Beverly can unmute themselves.
I'm just here to also learn and just listen, but thank you.
Of course. Thanks for coming. Let's see. Chelsea, I'm gonna see if you wanted to speak. I'm gonna turn your video off because, you know, that's just, you're so fine. It's just a thing. We don't have the public turn on their video. Do you want to speak, Chelsea?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Hi, I'm Chelsea Castellano. I am a co-lead of Bedrooms Are for People, and we are running a ballot initiative to make it legal for more than 3 unrelated people to live together. And we have about a month left to collect signatures to earn our spot on the ballot. And we have just under 500 signatures to go. So it's really exciting. We've been gaining a lot of support and getting out into the community and just seeing how people from different age groups, classes, races, just support the type of change that we're trying to make. And I'm really just thankful for all the work that you all are doing here on HAB. I know this is a thankless job, but it's really important. And so just here to just listen in, and yeah, if there's any questions, happy to answer. But just wanted to be here. So thank you.
Thanks for coming, Chelsea. It's great to see so much energy around this housing issue in Boulder. So it's really, really good. How is the online petitioning system working? Is it working well?
So no, the online petition system, it's working well for us now, and well is sort of a relative word. Luckily, we have some great skill sets on our team, people who are very good at coding and developing software. We've essentially had to develop a lot of software and coding around the city system in order to get it to work for people. So what we've developed as of now makes it work better, but there are barriers for people to be able to participate in the democratic process as of right now. It would have been a lot more of the choice that the city council made to not allow both in-person and digital signatures happening simultaneously essentially was, it made it harder for people to participate. So think of your grandmother who can just barely figure out how to text you. And you know, this system requires a pretty serious, not serious, but a level of digital literacy that really should not be required for participating in the democratic process. So we are missing out on people, but luckily we have enough supporters who are willing to go through the steps and who are able to go through the steps. So yeah.
Thanks. Are there any questions for Chelsea?
Can I just, I'm sorry, somebody is displaying their email. I don't know, that's Jay or Corey.
Oh, that's Jay.
Email's not.
Thanks, Kristen. Yeah, that was Jay. Don't worry, Jay, couldn't read it. Okay, great. Thank you again, Chelsea, for coming. I want to share a few messages that we got digitally from individuals who are unable to join the meeting, but I want to see if David wanted to speak, because I know he had some, quite a bit to say when he was asking a question. So David, I'm going to unmute you and see if you want to continue or.
Oh, thank you so much. Poor Mason knows I always want to continue, but I'm going to
Okay.
try to do this in a different way. And I hope I've spent this last year reflecting a little bit on, I've been so sad about our beautiful town, which diversity is the heart of our town. I was born here, and it's the heart of our economy and the beauty of the town. And I mostly bike around, and I see so many lovely people all the time. And there was a time when people who really insisted on living in the Boulder could buy a house, but now it's impossible. I've sent you all the graphs I've shown before, but there's a complete collapse of middle income for sale housing. I mean, there's just a few condos at any one time. And this is exactly what Boulder Housing Partners predicted back in 2014. I really hope everyone will read the 2014 strategic report. They just said what's going to happen, and it has. The solution is really pretty easy. And that's the good news I want to share. There is an easy solution. We showed how to do it with open space. We make craziness for ourselves, and because we have these beautiful goals and things that we say, but we have a market in land, and markets allocate scarce goods and resources to the highest bidder. That's what they do. And like Amory and 111 say, markets make a good servant, a bad master, and a worse religion. So with open space, we didn't say, let's let the deer and the mountain lions and the future generations and let's let them buy the land. No, we got together and said, this is an important part of the commons, an important legacy for us all. And so the same is true about housing. So our main suggestion is to take a good part of the housing units out of the speculative market. We'll never make any progress. I love Kristen Heiser. I love the staff of the city of Boulder, but we can't keep doing more of what we're doing, because what we're doing is simply not working. It's a broken housing system, and we only get luxury housing as a result. So I've made some suggestions about how to move forward. Number one, I really hope we can just put on the city dashboard what's really happening with affordable housing in general, not just for less than 60%. So actually say what's happening. That would be great, because then we have a real narrative of the collapse of the ability to have a diverse population, not just racially, by class. Unless you have diverse, affordable housing, you won't have any racial diversity. So we segregate people by race and class in this town. It's getting worse and worse and worse. So at least say how it really is. So that was number one. And I share some other things in that PowerPoint, but I really hope that you will come up with that recommendation. Put on the dashboard what's really going on with affordable housing. Adding some more rental units, that's a beautiful thing. That's awesome. But meanwhile, 85% of the housing is ever more super unaffordable. What kind of town is that? I mean, that's okay. So I'm just hoping, I know my time's out, but the other two main things I just hope you all can recommend. My ask to you all is that we have a new planning director. Let's look at the cost of not acting. There's a great thing in urban planning, a scenario plan, where you look at, well, what if we keep doing what we're doing, what will happen? And then I'm hoping you'll look at this idea, and I love board input, of allowing us to meet our housing needs in the town everywhere with this pilot idea. There's no lack of, we don't need more money. We showed we don't need more funds. We don't need more funds if we allow the zoning flexibility. So we can't use the argument that, oh, we just don't have the money. We showed at Alpine Balsam, the high end, you have high end housing, it subsidizes the low end, and modest sized middle income units, especially car shared, pay for themselves. You can make a profit on that that mixed income model. And then most of it has to be not market rate. We don't need any more market rate housing. Market rate housing ensures we'll always have affordable housing problems. So community land trust or the city own the land, the appreciation is moderated, you share it with the homeowners. And so most of the housing, certainly 99% of all the housing we build now should be appreciation moderated. Let's put a limit on luxury units. Nothing wrong with wealthy people, luxury, it's all good. But we've met our goal for that. Done. Check it off the list. We have enough luxury housing. Thank you. So instead of being so concerned about growth, let's have a different kind of growth, non-car dependent housing units that, let's all go to Vauban in Germany. Beautiful. They show how to do it. Let's all go there. We can go on a boat. We can have a lot of drinks or whatever along the way. We'll go to Vauban in Germany and just see that you can have everyone loves that place. We can do the same thing in Boulder. Everyone will love it. So lastly, just to finish, thank you for the flexibility. Let's decide the housing that we need. Let's decide how everyone can contribute to it. Everyone will benefit. Let's get everyone involved, but on that goal, just like we did with open space. We didn't save a little bit of open space. We saved a third of the county. And we can do the same thing with housing without a big subsidy even, if we have the zoning flexibility. So I'd love some input on that or some questions. My goal is to build a movement for that. That's the only way we're going to get change. Tomorrow at 12:30 at the Riverside Cafe, we're starting that process. We're building our first co-op, first for sale co-op at 715 North Street. So we're talking about how we're doing that, and then how can we expand that idea of modest sized car-free housing for everyone, and how do we build a coalition to move in that direction.
Thanks,
and do the beautiful thing we did with open space with housing. Thank you.
Love it. Love it. We got you. Don't worry. We love it. Thank you. Thank you so much. I love the breadth of what we've heard this evening, but I just want to share a few emails that the board received. I'm sure you've all read the emails, but there are actually just two that we received from individuals who couldn't attend. And one was from an elderly individual who was really hoping to get more, see more housing built in Boulder for elderly individuals. Specifically, was mentioned duplexes and multifamily housing. That's something that they wanted to see, good, well-designed housing for the aging population in Boulder. And then another email that we received had to do with the quality of construction in the apartments and housing here. And I believe it was specifically with regards to affordable housing. Issues of, sound transmission, just challenges around quality construction. And that's something I experienced here. I live in a Boulder Housing Partners complex, and they're actually going to do renovations on it in the coming years. And sound insulation is definitely an issue. It's very drafty in here. So that's something that, I'm hoping that there's more funding for the upkeep of these spaces. The wear and tear on them, does affect the livability. And I know, Kristen, you did mention that, upkeep of these spaces is a priority. So that's good.
Charlotte, if I could just add, we saw that email come through and we actually forwarded it to our community mediation team.
Okay.
Has been in contact with that individual before and is reaching out to them to see how we might be able to help them navigate that specific situation. So
great. Thank you. Very, very helpful. That's awesome. I don't see any additional individuals who I haven't called on. So are there any questions? I'll open it up to the board. Are there any questions or just comments from the board? I know it may take some time to just meditate on, what we heard, and, part of the processing of the information will come to fruition in like some sort of report that we put together. So we can talk about that later in the meeting, but if there are there any additional questions or even comments from the public, something that came up after you spoke, maybe you want to share something else, happy to open it up again. If there's something else, you can raise your hand or. Okay. Well, in that case, thank you everyone for coming. I know a number of individuals have already left. Thank you, for speaking. Thank you to Kristen for coming and, sharing a presentation with us. I believe that we all thoroughly enjoyed it, and this is what we do. This is what we do best, and this will translate into a lot of really meaningful work. So thank you for coming.
Thank you, Charlotte. And I just want to say a quick thanks to Kisa Quambeck from the county, because without them, we wouldn't be able to get the resources out that we're able to without Housing Helpline. So just really appreciate them being that entry point for us. So just appreciate Kisa. Thank you all. Happy to revisit in the future, and just have a great evening, and just reach out if you need anything. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks, y'all too.
And individuals can feel free to stay from the public. You can stay or leave, whatever you'd like. We're just going to proceed with our meeting. Just getting to the agenda. Okay, great. Okay, so we can move to the approval of the minutes from our last meeting, and those were attached to the agenda. Are there any changes at this point? I believe it was sent out and you could have all offered suggestions or changes. No? Okay, well, then I'll put forward a motion to approve the minutes from March 31st. And Danny's seconding it. Great, thank you. All in favor of approving the minutes from March 31st? All right, passes unanimously. And then, perfect, we can move forward to matters from the board. And first will be the chair elections. Jay, I might turn it over to you to remind us how this process works. It's been a year. I have someone to nominate, but I just want to make sure that we're doing this right.
There isn't really a right way or a wrong way. I mean, I would just suggest that you open it up. I don't think there doesn't have to be a formal nomination, just say who is interested.
Okay.
Kind of how we've done it in the past.
Okay. Well, is there anyone who's interested? I know I have someone who's interested, but I know Michael's interested. Sorry, Michael, cat's out of the bag. But is there anyone else who's interested in chair or vice chair? Well, then I'm just going to nominate Michael to be the chair after this meeting. It's been a pleasure. Michael is incredibly experienced, has worked at the intersection of housing and land use, has time to be the chair, has time to invest in the much needed work behind being chair. When I first took on chair, I originally thought that I was going to be able to invest so much more time. And, I regret that I haven't been able to invest as much time. And so I want this role to be given to someone who can invest more time and give it a little more TLC. So Michael, if you're interested, I'd love for you to just speak on that, and I think you'd be brilliant. So.
Sure. I humbly submit that I am interested, and I would put a lot of passion into it. And I have had a lot of experience with housing issues. I don't know if you read my application, but so I don't want to belabor that. But definitely the organization I work for, housing, affordable housing, mixed income housing, housing initiatives for the homeless, all the above, middle income workforce have been big issues. So I feel like I've got pretty good grounding in at least what works or what can work. It's obviously a big challenge. And I would look forward to serving in that role. If, you know, I guess that's the end of my campaign speech. But thank you for the nomination.
Of course.
We still need a vice chair.
Do we vote on each one individually or no?
We should do it together. I don't think you.
Okay.
And I would suggest it may be great if somebody who has not been a chair or vice chair, if they would be willing to step up.
I just want to say that I second Michael for chair.
Third, Michael.
I think you just raised your hand to volunteer to be.
Do I get to vote for myself?
Is anyone volunteering to be vice chair? Danny?
Is that only if Michael, like if you get assassinated or something, then they have to yeah, I'll volunteer to be vice chair.
Unless you're always off the grid and like can't be communicated with.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
The only extra responsibility, Danny, is that you fill in for Michael when he's not there.
Okay.
But there's also the chairs meeting, which happens 2 weeks before each meeting, where you basically finalize the agenda.
Okay.
So those are usually like 30 minutes.
No problem at all. Okay.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I love the energy. So good. Well, I love this. Then let's vote on it. Then I will put forward a motion to nominate Michael as chair and Danny as vice chair.
Second.
Seconded. Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Congratulations. So exciting. Oh my gosh. Pass the baton.
It's the first year I'm not doing anything. I feel really excited about that.
It's super anticlimactic and it's fine.
It's a shotgun marriage, Danny, but
Yeah.
we're
Exactly right.
I love this for you. I love this for both of you. This is so good. Yay. So great. Well, Michael, I'm just gonna finish off this meeting as doing my thing, and then you can take the reins after, next meeting, okay?
Not this meeting, fine.
Is that okay?
Sure, that's great.
Cool. Or not. I actually don't really care. I don't know why I said that. You want to take over?
I'm not,
You actually complete the meeting and then.
Oh, I do? Okay.
Yeah. He'll pick up on the next one with doing the meeting beforehand and everything else, but this is yours to complete.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
You can run with it.
Not that quickly.
okay. Well, the next item is committee and project liaison reports. Is there anything to report tonight? No.
I think the only active committee we've got going on right now is the one on tiny houses, and with Jacques out, and I'm not sure if him and Terry had met or if there's anything new. But definitely part of the meeting when we send out the week before asking people to update us about where they're at on their committees or if they have anything to report, that would have been put on the agenda.
Yeah. So next time there will be a riveting report. No problem. We can move on to matters from staff. And yeah, I'm going to turn it over to Jay. to talk about this?
So we need another volunteer. So this is not to be on the committee, but you're just going to be helping to select the members of this new committee, just to be clear about that. So I don't anticipate it being more than one, maybe 2 meetings at the most. So it's just reviewing applications and then getting together with staff, as well as, I believe there's going to be someone from the newer group also helping to select. So any questions about what that involves? There's a bit of a description. There's a link in the agenda. And I would say Danny's off the hook since he volunteered to be vice chair, as well as Michael.
I just have a question. Are there five spots for the board or for the committee that chooses the individuals on the board?
The new committee, the Tenant Advisory Committee, is a 5-person committee. The group that I select, I think, is 4 or 5.
Okay.
Don't everybody step back at once.
I know. Mason, don't you want to do this?
What, Jay, when are the meetings?
They have
Election meetings?
we will set them up at your convenience.
And how long do you anticipate each meeting running? I mean, I've never been through a process like that before, so I have no idea.
I would say a maximum of 4-hour commitment.
Per meeting or in total? Okay. I would volunteer to do that.
Thank you, Juliet.
Yeah, that's kind of in my wheelhouse since I'm a recruiter.
Well, and this one should be the future Tenant Advisory Committee members will get $1,000 stipend every year. So I think it's not going to be that difficult to recruit. Anything else?
Great.
Great. Thank you very much, Juliet. So one other thing, and I mentioned this earlier, so we have upcoming agendas that we need to think about. So if you have ideas for agenda items, please let Michael and myself know. And I haven't talked to Michael about this, but my suggestion for the next meeting is that we devote half of it to talking about a brief history of race and class and housing in Boulder. And they're a very powerful presentation that's done by Clay Fong in our community relations group, talking about the history. And I think you guys will really appreciate it. So that's one thing I would suggest. But right now I don't have much for the remainder of the agenda. So keep that in mind.
I think that you should talk about the listening session, like putting together that report, that write up, after the listening session. I think it was in 2019, the tiny homes one, there was a report that was put together, and that was so helpful, so great. So eventually you might want to.
That was Judy. So
Yeah.
Judy did a lot of that. So someone is going to have to volunteer.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, you can do that next time if you want.
Yeah, I think that's a great agenda item. Really look forward to that. And I think it's very timely,
Yeah.
given, some of the discussion that we had here today and some of the questions that were posed from the public. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm very supportive of that. I think that'd be great. And to allot as much time as we need for that as well.
Love. Great.
Related to that topic that Jay mentioned, the history of housing, I assume that's going to deal with housing inequality in Boulder largely. There's some really good summaries of that short podcast we actually used for a discussion group we did last month with ULI. I'd be happy to forward you links to that. I mean, this is stuff that takes 30 minutes to get through and gives you a lot of the information in a thick book like Color of Law. I'm happy to send that out.
That'd be great.
Awesome. Great. Are there any other things that needed to come up? Any other topics at this point?
Anything else you want to hear from staff?
Mason put a thumbs up.
You heard about the unhoused study session, the update next Tuesday. The memo is out on that as well. I assume you heard about last night, Council, the discussion about encampments.
Mason.
Yes, and for anybody who didn't watch City Council meeting last night, even though City Council was hit with what one council member said, a plethora of a whirlwind of emails, City Council voted to increase the police department's budget by 6 officers and 3 more vehicles to enforce sweeps in Boulder at the tune of $1.5 million, which that money could have been invested in social programs as well. So it's something to consider when we have the meeting coming up, and the hardships that our unhoused are facing, as well as the fact that it's clear the direction that council is headed in, which is not investing in our public infrastructure and services needed to actually help service unhoused, but to criminalize them and continue to cause harm. So I think it's something important for all of us to be aware of, especially since we are the Housing Advisory Board. And as we go into future discussions, I don't think it's next week. I think they pushed it out to May 26th, right? For yeah.
Right, I just saw that.
Yeah, so just something for all of us to consider as a community as we criminalize the poor and the unhoused. What, if any, position we'd like to take as individuals, not necessarily as the Housing Advisory Board, moving forward.
Thanks, Mason. Well said. Is there anything else? No? Well, it's been fun. I'm sure that you will all take the reins of this board and ride off into the sunset and do good things. I'll be watching from the East Coast. Don't make me come back here.
I'll do my best to carry on your legacy, Charlotte.
You'll do brilliantly.
Thank you for your service, Charlotte.
Yeah, Charlotte, I just want to say it was really nice work with you. Sad we never got to have a meeting in person, but you did a great job and appreciate it, and good luck with.
Thank you.
Godspeed, Charlotte. Thank you very much. You did great.
Thanks. It's been fun meeting you all.
Thanks, Charlotte. Good luck.
Thanks. All right. Well, I will close out this meeting. Can motion to adjourn.
Second.
Great. All in favor of adjourning the meeting? All right. Good night, everyone.
Night. Thank you.
Thanks, Charlotte. Godspeed.
Bye. Thanks, Corey.
Bye,
Thanks,
Charlotte.
Shay. Bye.
Bye.